Hello, my name is Elaine Horn, and today we will be looking at Cisco Networking Academy's Introduction to Cybersecurity course. This particular recording will only cover Chapter 1, and there are 5 chapters of this course, so we will also have recordings available for the other chapters. Please note my email address, ehorn@metasolutions.net. And if you have any questions about the recordings, feel free to contact me directly. So before we get started into the course, let's look at a definition of cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is the protection of computer systems from theft or damage to their hardware, software, or electronic data, as well as from disruption or misdirection of the services they provide. If you log into your bank to deposit $1,000, we have grown accustomed to trust that that $1,000 is going to our account and not to a hacker. That would be considered a misdirection of services. The field of cybersecurity is growing in importance due to our reliance on computer systems using the internet and wireless networks such as Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. There's also the growth of smart devices, devices such as Echo Dots, Google's Nest, our smartphones, our televisions. We trust devices such as Echo Dots and Google's Nest thermostats, even though default passwords are available online. We share our family information with unknown friends using apps such as Facebook. So electronic information via networking has become an integral part of our daily lives, oftentimes with no thoughts of the security of our information. So as a beginning course in Introduction to Cybersecurity, you definitely want to make sure as a teacher that the students are aware of their data that they share online, and also that many of our IoT devices use default passwords, which gives hackers an opening into our networks. Before we get started into the coursework, first I wanted to look at the Cisco Learning portfolio. And notice you'll see the line that says Security. And the course that we're looking at, Introduction to Cybersecurity, is exploratory. There is another course called Cybersecurity Essentials that is foundational, and we will be doing recordings on that. And in fact, I recommend, if you're only teaching Introduction to Cybersecurity, that you look at the recordings for Cybersecurity Essentials, because it will dive deeper into concepts. So if there's a concept that you don't understand in Introduction to Cybersecurity, as a teacher, you might find more information about that concept in the recording on Cybersecurity Essentials. You're going to notice that Cisco Academy does have 2 career-ready courses, CCNA Security and CCNA Cybersecurity Operations. You could make your students aware of these courses so that they could look for them in post-secondary colleges. We will be doing a recording on Introduction to IoT, and you will notice that Cisco Academy has added a course called IoT Security. So you will see that there's a course called IoT Security. We will not do any recordings on that one. So here's another way to look at Cisco Academy's portfolio on cybersecurity. It does not include that IoT security course. And here's a look at the 5 chapters of Cybersecurity, Introduction to Cybersecurity version 2.1. So when you're creating this course, please create it as either version 2.1, or if you see an updated version such as 2.2 or 2.3, Please make sure that you go ahead and create the most recent version of the class. And by the way, instructor training is not required to create this class. So you should be able, if you are marked as an instructor in the Cisco Networking Academy database, you should be able to easily create this class. Notice it's a 15-hour class for students and explores cyber trends, threats, and staying safe in cyberspace, and plus protecting personal and company data. This can be offered as an instructor-led class where you enroll students in your class, or if you have a student with a netacad.com account, they could create the class on their own and enroll in it and self-complete that course. Before we get too far into the coursework, let's take a break right here and go to the netacad.com site, and we're going to look at the resources for this particular course. And when I go down and look at the course resources, we're going to see the courses that we saw in the portfolio, and you will see Introduction to Cybersecurity at the top. Here's version 2.1. And we do want it in English. And these are the different teacher materials that are available when you are teaching this class. The PowerPoints will include the teacher materials in them, so they will have some teacher guide materials in them that you should not share with students. You can share with students, but you probably won't want to. There is a scope and sequence. You have all the labs available to you in case you want to print them out. The instructor labs do have the answers. This is a nice document. This at-a-glance document is a nice document if you're trying to advertise the course. There's some FAQs, so these are frequently asked questions that may be helpful if you're having trouble with the course. And then if you're doing a presentation, you might want to use some of the slides out of the course overview. I will tell you that I looked at the additional resources and activities, and many of these are based on URLs. So if you plan to use any of these additional resources and activities, make sure you check to make sure that the URL is still valid. So let's go back to the slideshow. So chapter 1, and this is the chapter that we will be discussing today, is called The Need for Cybersecurity. So here's the sessions and the sections and objectives. So the first thing they're going to go over is personal data. So it's going to be talking about how you should protect your personal data and make sure students know what we mean by the term personal data. We also talk about organization data. This is your corporate, your company, your small business, nonprofit organizations, those type of people, or those types of organizations. So they'll go into that. And then they'll also talk about attackers and cybersecurity professionals. And they will finish up with a discussion on cyber warfare. These are the labs that are in this chapter. We will take a look at lab 1.2.1.3, compare data with a hash, and then 1.2.2.5, which is what was taken. We'll just kind of skim that one. So again, the curriculum is going to start off with personal data. So basically, that's what we're going to start with. So it's going to say Introduction to Personal Data. And we know that all types of organizations such as medical, financial, and education institutions use networking and are susceptible to cybersecurity attacks. The protection of this information is vital to our national security and economic stability. On a personal level, everyone needs to safeguard their identity, their data, and their computing devices. At the corporate level, it is everyone's responsibility in the company to protect the organization's reputation, data, and customers. So your identity, both online and offline, can affect your life. Your online identity is the person who your friends and family interact with on a daily basis at home, at school, or work. They know your personal information such as your name, age, or where you live. Your online identity is who you are in cyberspace. Your online identity is how you will present yourself to others online. This online identity should only reveal a limited amount of information about you. So on your online identity, you should not include all of your personal information. You should be appropriate and respectful, and students should not attract unwanted attention. So where is on your online identity, where might a hacker find some personal data? So when we look at this, every time you go to the doctor's office, more information is added to your electronic health records. Medical devices, such as fitness bands, generate an enormous amount of data that is stored in the cloud. And we're going to take a break in just a second, and we're going to look at the latest Apple Watch. And you will notice that they are collecting a lot of information. That information goes to the cloud, so then it may be available to hackers. Students need to remember that even disciplinary reports may be in education records. So I think they realize if somebody looks at your education records that they'll find your grades, your test scores, things like that. But they may not think about that those disciplinary reports may be in there as well. Of course, financial records include salary, credit card statements, and something we call the credit rating. Students should be made aware that they will need to continually check their online accounts and credit rating. Checking that credit rating can sometimes let you know if your identity has been stolen. So checking that credit rating gets important as we go into where all these records are being shared. And we will take a look at that URL too. So let's just kind of break right here. And we'll look at the Apple Watch first. So this is the newest Apple Watch. So notice it says is capable of generating an ECG similar to a single lead electrocardiogram. It's an achievement for a wearable device that can provide critical data for doctors and peace of mind for you. What students have to realize and what we have to realize is this information is stored in the cloud. So they'll go on down here, they'll talk about your heart rate and all the different information. And when we get down here to the bottom, notice they advertise that it tracks all your health data in one convenient place. That convenient place happens to be in the cloud. Now there are some pretty cool things that they are doing with these new Apple Watches. So notice there's a fall detection and there's an emergency SOS. So that's pretty cool. So notice here, this one is for diabetes, and it's showing a high glucose alert. And there are other fitness types bands out there. So I encourage you to have students spend some time looking at the information that is tracked and stored in the cloud. The other part we were going to look at is credit scores. Credit scores are probably something that students aren't even thinking about at this age. But what they have to realize is as we get credit cards, as we open up bank accounts, as we start paying our bills online, that you do have a credit rating, and that credit rating will determine if a student can go out and buy a new car in their own name. So I think it's important, and I think they have to realize that our financial information is also being stored in the cloud. So we need to be careful, and we also want to occasionally check our credit rating, because if we do that, we should be able to see if there's credit cards on there that aren't ours, or if it looks like our checking account balance went down and we don't realize that. So it can tell you some things, and it might lead to letting you know that there might have been an identity theft on one or more of your accounts. So this would be a good time to kind of review credit rating and how it might help you protect some of your accounts in one swoop. I am a Capital One credit card user, and what they do is probably about once a month, they send me my credit rating, and I can go in and look at the changes. So I can look at why there has been changes made to my credit rating. And that score will be somewhere between 300 and 850. So, and it will compare it to me and tell me exactly why my credit rating changed. We're going to go back to the PowerPoint now. So the big question is, and we've already got students thinking about it at this point, is do you know where your data is? So when you go to a doctor's office, you're going to see that a lot of the information that the doctor's office collects on you is stored, and also your insurance company has your information. And medical records are actually protected by HIPAA, and that's called the Health Information Privacy Law. And we will look at a couple of URLs on that in just a few minutes. Students also have to be aware that even though they're really nice, those store loyalty cards collect a lot of information on us. Don't be surprised if you go to the grocery store and you pick out one brand of butter, and if you have a store loyalty card, when you get home and you open up your Facebook account or something like that, or a similar program, don't be surprised if there's a Target advertisement for a different brand of butter. We will look at a privacy policy in just a second. And make sure students are aware of online pictures that they share. Friends and strangers may also have a copy of their online pictures, and we'll look at that in just a second as well. And they need to not forget that they have computer devices. So your phone, your computer, all those devices need to be secured with strong passwords. And we will talk about that later in the courseware as to what is considered a strong password. So let's look at some of these URLs. So there is um, the Health Information Privacy Law and Policy. It's called shortcut HIPAA, is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And it's a federal privacy law that sets a baseline of protection for certain individually identified health information. So it's called HIPAA. It protects our health information. It's a federal law that our insurance companies, our doctors' offices are supposed to be protecting our health information. And notice when you look over here, we see technology over here as a big part of this, because once the information is stored on a server in the cloud, on an individual computer, it needs to be secured by our doctor's offices and our insurance companies. So what information is protected? Information your doctors, nurses, and other healthcare providers put in your medical record, conversations your doctor has about your care or treatment, information about your health insurance computer system, billing information, and most other health information about you held by those who must follow these laws. So students need to be aware that there are laws protecting their health information. As far as loyalty cards are concerned, this is the grocery store that I shop at. Notice all kinds of deals by me having a loyalty card. And I can even go in and shop online and go get it delivered to my car. Just pull up and get it delivered. But what I wanted to take a look at in here is the privacy part. So if you go all the way to the bottom here, notice there's a privacy policy. Notice they leave that at the very bottom. So this is something that you can do, or you can encourage students to do, is if they have these loyalty cards, or before they sign up for a loyalty card, to go in and check to see what they're going to do with their information. So why do they collect it? How would they collect it? How they share it, which is very important, and how they protect it. So that's something we can include in this section, is we could talk about the loyalty cards, and then we can go in and discuss how they protect it. So kind of looking at how their loyalty card that they're using protects their information. So if you have anything of value, and the students may not think they have things of value, but I bet they do. If they have anything of value, the criminals want it. So what we're going to get ready to look at is something that happened with frequent flyer miles. So miles that people have accumulated from flying that can be redeemed for free airline seats. So you can pretty much redeem those, either free or reduced. And then we also look at if you're filing a tax return. It's become a big identity theft. Basically, that people will file a fake tax return in your name. So students need to be aware that we may not think of all the ways that criminals might get our information, or the way they may get anything that we value. And in both of these cases, one of them was frequent flyer miles, and the other one is our tax refund. So this is just an article on what happened with United and American Airlines when they basically, there was a well-publicized hack, and you're going to notice StubHub and Dropbox had a similar one. And notice it says technically they were not hackings at all. So they came out in the news as hackings, but they weren't really hackings, because if you look at it down here, it says hackers managed to breach a chatroom.com security and steal all the password. And notice it says there's a good chance this happened with without anyone at chatroom.com even realizing it. It says those passwords are probably worthless to thieves. There's little to no money to be made from breaking into a small casual discussion forum shared by friends or fellow hobbyists. But there is money to be made if an individual chat room member's password also grants access to that individual's bank account or their StubHub account or their frequent flyer account. So once they got access to their passwords and they figured out what their username was, they could go in and they could pretty much steal their frequent flyer miles. And how did that benefit them? They could book free flights. So they could book free flights. And this is the one about tax refunds. And notice this is a taxpayer guide identity theft. And basically, they are aware that this is happening. So what they have done is they actually have a page. The IRS has a page to tell you what to do if you are a victim of this. And basically what happens as somebody gets your Social Security number, they file a tax return. You may not even know that they filed a tax return in your name and your Social Security number until you get ready to file. And it'll tell you that that your taxes have already been filed. And you're going to notice here that they list some warning signs as well. So these are some pages that you could review with students when you got to this section and you wanted to talk about some real hacks or compromises that happen. And the IRS is one of those. I did skip this one here on Facebook, so let's go back to it. This was on the previous slide. If students are using Facebook, if they go up here to this question mark, they will notice that they'll be able to do a privacy checkup and check privacy shortcuts. I recommend that they do this. So they should go in and they should check that either nobody has access to certain information, maybe they don't want people to have access to their phone number, maybe they don't want people to have access to their email, or maybe they just want their friends to have it. But there's not probably too many things on Facebook that people would want to be public. So there's not too many things on Facebook that they would want to be public. So they should go in and check these settings. And that could be an assignment that you give a student as well. So now we're going to switch from personal data to organizational data. And like I said, when we say organizational data, they're trying to include corporate, small business, nonprofits, anybody that has a business of any type would be considered an organization. So, and when we're talking about organization data, there's more types of data that we have to look at. So when you look at traditional data, notice it says there's personal data. So for all the employees, you have that type of data. So you've got the personnel data, which includes payroll. If you're a company like Apple Computer, you definitely have intellectual data. So you've got patents, trademarks, trade secrets. And then also as a company, you would have financial data. So your income statements, your balance sheets, your cash flow statements. And since now we see the Internet of Things, and we also have to worry about the data that's collected by these organizations, what's happening to it, you also have the data that's collected off of the IoT, and some of these will be sensors. And then you also have the big data that is part of the organizational data. Now, what you see on the right-hand side there is what we call the CIA triad, and it's basically a guideline for information security for an organization. And confidentiality is going to ensure the privacy of the data. So make sure you keep it confidential by restricting access. Integrity ensures that the information is accurate and trustworthy. And availability ensures that the information is accessible to authorized people. So those are the three things when we're looking at a guideline for information security. Those are the three things that basically we think about when we are designing our cybersecurity strategies. And before we get into this slide, let me show you a link here. This one here, this is a link that I found. It's just a blog, and there is more information here on the CIA triad. So you're going to see that it's on here as well. So when we're talking about confidentiality of information, we're protecting the information from disclosure to unauthorized parties. So you want to make sure that your bank account statements are confidential, your personal information are confidential. When we look at integrity, we're trying to make sure that our information, protecting information from being modified by unauthorized parties. And they have a good example in here, and we'll see the same example in the slideshow. So it says information only has value if it is correct. Information that has been tampered with could prove costly. For example, if you're sending an online money transfer for $100, but the information was tampered in such a way that you actually sent $10,000, it could be proved to be very costly for you. And then finally, the availability. And notice it says availability of information refers to ensuring that authorized parties are able to access the information when needed. So if there's information that is on a server that I need, it is responsibility that that server is basically available to me when needed. So if I want to go access my bank statement online, availability basically says that should be available to me because it's my bank account statement. So it says the CIA triad is a very fundamental concept in security. And what I will mention to you, this is whenever you study a cybersecurity course, you will always see the CIA triad in there. So if the students can understand the basic concepts behind the CIA triad, they are on their way to understanding cybersecurity. Now let's look at integrity a little bit in more detail. Because integrity, we already looked at the example with the bank account. Basically, it's trying to make sure that whatever happens is accurate and that I am confident through trustworthiness that this is going to happen correctly. So notice there's a process. So in the example, you'll see that plain text message. And we don't know what the message is. It's just a plain text message. Basically, what will happen with that plain text message to kind of make sure that we have integrity in this message, so when it gets to the other side, it hasn't been changed. It's the same message that was sent. It'll send it through a hash function. And a hash function is just some type of mathematical algorithm. And that hash function, as you notice on the side, may be MD5. It may be SHA-1, SHA-256, SHA-512. There are other ones that we'll see in the lab when we look at it. Well, what will happen with those hash functions, so we'll just pretend like we're using MD5. So it goes through here, it does the algorithm that somebody has created called MD5 and comes out on the other end, and it has a fixed length hash value. And these are sometimes called checksum. And what a checksum is going to do is verify the integrity of the files after they had been transferred from one device to another across the network. And these checksums are calculated with the hash algorithms or the hash functions. There's another slide on this that gives you an example very similar to the one that we saw. And basically you'll see that it says John Smith agrees to pay $500 per month for rent. And when that is put through the algorithm and it comes out with its fixed length hash value or its checksum, when it comes out with that value, notice if that's changed to $5,000, that checksum is different. So that fixed length hash value that you see there at the end is different. So this is how you can, hashing is one of the ways that we can ensure integrity in our information. And there is a lab on this that I think your students will enjoy. The lab looks like this. Basically what you're going to do is have your students do is create a text file, and they will save that text file, and they're going to save it with the hash in the file name. So they're going to know that this text file is going to be used for this lab. You're going to install HashCalc. So that's one thing you'll have to do is make sure you can install this. Install HashCalc, or it could already be installed on the computer. That's probably what's going to happen. So you'll be able to skip part of this with the students. Once you get it installed and you open it up, it's going to look like this. So it's going to come up like this. You're going to clear all the check marks. And what you're going to do is you're going to click on the dots here. You're going to find your hash text message. They're going to have you do this in MD5. So you can click on MD5. And once you have your text file up here, the name of it, you click on MD5, come down here and click on Calculate. It's going to give you that checksum or that fixed value. So it's going to give you that checksum. And then what they'll have the students do is go in and change the message, put that new text file in here. So they'll change this to the new text file, click on MD5 again, calculate, and they'll notice that that checksum is different. And this is a topic that is covered further in the Cybersecurity Essentials class. This is a lab that I recommend that you do complete with your students. So we're still on the topic of organizational data. So attackers will always continue to find new ways to target networks. Eventually, an advanced and targeted cyber attack will succeed. The priority that will then be how quickly a security team can respond to the attack to minimize the loss of data, downtime, and revenue. Anything posted online can live on forever even if someone erases all the copies. So that's something that people have to think about as they're putting information online. So what they're going to do at this part of the curriculum is they're going to go over some examples of security breaches. So this will be the time that your students will look at some security breaches that have already occurred. So one of them they're going to look at is LastPass, and this one happened in July 2015. And basically, LastPass is a application that will save your passwords for you. So it'll save your usernames and your passwords. So it's an online password manager. When this was breached, it stole email addresses, password reminders. So we know it asks for us, like what city were you born in as a password reminder. And it also stole those authentication hashes that we've just talked about. Due to the fact that LastPass required email verification when a new computer was used to log into your account, or it also may have required multi-factor authentication when logging in from an unknown device. So multi-factor authentication means you need more than just a password. You need something else to log in. So because of that, the security breach was not as crucial as it could have been. So what they're recommending, what LastPass of course recommended after this happened, is users should use complex master password, change master password periodically, and beware of phishing attacks. So phishing attacks are attacks where somebody might send you an email and ask you some information that is personal, confidential, and probably that you don't want to give them. So whenever you get emails like that, you need to make sure that you look at them closely to see who they're from and make sure they look like they're legit. What a student has to realize, if a company website or network has been breached, it could leak to confidential documents or revealed trade secrets, or more importantly, stolen intellectual properties for the corporations. So like I said, in this particular part of the curriculum, they're going to give you a chance to look at many security breaches that have happened. And they will give you some labs. So notice there's an assignment here where student does a report of a specific data breach. So these are the biggest ones of 2018. And then there's also a lab where it says what was taken. So the students have the chance to use Google and some other sites to investigate security breaches. So now we're going to switch to a different part of the chapter, and here we're going to talk about attackers. So attackers are individuals or groups who attempt to exploit vulnerabilities for personal or financial gain. Something that you need to realize, when I say vulnerability, it's a weakness in the system. So it could be a weakness in the operating system, it could be a weakness in the software that you're using, it could be a weakness in your password. So notice we've got amateurs, they're script kiddies with little or no skill. What they do is they find existing tools or instructions online to create attacks. Now hackers break into computers or networks to gain access. Normally with the script kiddies, one of the big things that they try to do is take down networks. So hackers are actually going to break into the computer, where a script kiddie may have a hobby of just trying to take down networks. So white hats are considered an ethical hacker because they break into the system with permission to discover weaknesses. So this might be an employee that's on your cybersecurity team, and their job is to look for weaknesses or what we call vulnerabilities in the system that needs fixed. Gray hats, they compromise the system without permission. It's unethical. It's against the law. So that's important because they're breaking the law too. But a lot of times they won't do anything with that information. A gray hat they're not going to be an employee of yours, but they may be somebody that would actually contact you and say, I found this vulnerability in your network. So a white hat is probably employed by the company, either by an outside company or maybe it's a contractor, or they are employed by your cybersecurity team. Where a gray hat, they are not part of your company. They're just trying to see if they can break into your network. Black hats are the bad guys because they take advantage of any vulnerability, and what they're after is personal, financial, or political goal. Now, organized hackers, we talk about hacktivists. They make political statements to create awareness to issues that are important to them. There's also state-sponsored attackers that gain intelligence to commit sabotage on behalf of their government. And the thing to remember about the organized hackers is that they're usually highly trained and well-funded, and their attacks are focused on specific goals that are beneficial to their companies or to their government. This is a chart that kind of shows you cyber attackers, and you see insiders will be employers and ex-employees, the contract staff, so people that you've contracted to work for you, or trusted partners. And cybersecurity breaches can come from the inside. So that's important for companies to realize. When you look at outsiders, those are the ones that we just discussed. So those are the ones that we just discussed. And these would be considered internal and external threats. And finally, we're going to end up this chapter with talking about cyber warfare. What we have to realize with cyber warfare is nations can carry out conflicts without the clashes of traditional troops and machines. This allows countries with very little military presence to be as strong as other nations in cyberspace. Cyber warfare is an internet-based conflict that involves the penetration of computer system networks of other nations. And they use cyber warfare to cause damage or disrupt services, such as shutting down a power grid. And notice it says the Stuxnet malware that was designed to damage Iran's nuclear enrichment plant. And that malware did not hijack targeted computers to steal information. It was designed to damage physical equipment that was controlled by computers. And it used modular coding that was programmed to perform a specific task within the malware. There is a video of this in the curriculum. We won't take time to look at that now, but I do recommend that you take a look at that video. Now, this is probably kind of out. It's in the wrong place in the curriculum as far as I'm concerned, but we're going to go ahead and just leave it here for right now. But what they want to realize in this one is there is something, we know we all have our personal signatures, so that we use our personal signatures to write checks, sign for credit cards. There is also a digital signature in networking used to verify a person's data. So there's something called a digital signature as well. So you're going to notice when we look over there at Alice and Bob, and by the way, when you look at different websites, a lot of times they'll use Alice and Bob. Those are the good ones. And they'll use Eve as the evil hacker. So just kind of get used to that. And there is something called a digital signature where you have your own private key and you have your own public key. So notice on the left-hand side it says Alice signs a message with her private key. Bob can verify that Alice sent the message if the message has not been modified using Alice's public key. And notice it says a digital signature refers to a set of algorithms and encryption protections used to determine the authenticity of a document or software. In simpler terms, a digital signature is a complicated way to verify that a document hasn't been tampered with during transit between sender and signer. So these are the things that if a student gets a job in cybersecurity, these are the types of things that they'll be learning about. They'll be learning encryption techniques. So encryption is just how do you scramble the message so nobody else can read it. So even if somebody, a hacker gets the information, there's no way they can read it. And of course, the private key and the public key is just going to verify that that this is an authentic message. Now, I did go out and search for a couple of URLs for that. So let me see if I can find them. This is another one that I found on public and private keys. And they show you what an example of what a public key might look like. So basically, notice they're long random numbers. And notice here they talk about cryptography. So cryptography is something that students could study. So cryptography gets into how these keys are created. So the public key is what its name suggests is public. It's made available to everyone. And on the other hand, the private key must remain confidential to its prospective owner. And because the key is mathematically related, whatever is encrypted with the public key may only be decrypted, so it may only be opened and read by its corresponding private key. There's another one that I found here. If you are interested in including more information about cryptography in your coursework, I did find some information on Khan Academy. So if you wanted to include that as part of your coursework, you could. Okay, that's the next one. So here's the purposes of cyber warfare. So we're going to finish today, if I can find it. First of all, that's the last slide that we have. Before I go any further, we can look for vulnerabilities out there. And again, I've just Googled some things and found some things. So when an attacker is looking for vulnerabilities, they might be looking for legacy software. So software that's been around for a lot of time where somebody has not done any of the updates. So that would be a good instance. Microsoft has pretty much announced that Windows 7 is not safe. So they hope people aren't using it anymore, but they might be. Default configuration. So if you've bought an IoT device and you have not changed the default password, Encryption, where they scramble up the message so nobody can read it other than the person that has the decryption method. Remote access policies, where you can telnet or go into other people's networks virtually. So you're in one location, somebody else is in another location, and you can get into there. So there's some other things listed here. Malware. People need to watch out for malware. Don't forget, we'll talk about in that the next chapter. So some of the things that are on this slide right here are a great introduction to the next chapter. Again, if you have any questions and you need assistance, feel free to email me directly. Please also look for the recording on Chapter 2. Thank you for your time.